Welcome to Booked All Night, the podcast for book lovers and storytellers who lose sleep over a good book. I'm your host, Jessica Mary, and I'm joined weekly by Leigh and Magdalyn Ann as we geek out over great books and the craft of writing them. This week, we're discussing chapters 1 through 10 of Prince of Glass and Midnight by Lindsay Miller. Before we get into it, I want to remind you about our Discord community, where you'll get access to exclusive giveaways and excerpts, and have the opportunity to sit in on our author interviews live. Don't miss out on author events, especially when they're free. Alright, my little Libranauts, buckle up, settle in, and let's launch into Prince of Glass and Midnight.
I've been calling it Prince of Throne and Glass for some reason.
Almost like there's another YA title. Yeah, so the back copy for Prince of Glass and Midnight is that it is about it's about Cinderella's Prince Charming. Specifically, it's for fans of the Disney Twisted Tales series and Serena Valentino's Villains. It's like the next part of the Prince young adult series, where Prince Charming gets to tell, quote, his side of Disney's Cinderella. But it's not really like Disney's Cinderella. It is definitely using that IP work, but there's a whole new world in here. Some things that remain the same is because it's a Disney telling. The parents are dead, right? That's just classic Disney. And there is a magical memory curse that is plaguing the nearby village of Fresney, which is where August, who is Prince Charming, used to spend his childhood, and he played with Ella, the titular Cinderella of the Disney films. They kind of lose touch, and then he goes back, and it's all very super awkward. I did enjoy the opening of the letters. I thought that was a really nice way to move through a lot of backstory very quickly.
And those were an emotional gut punch, too.
Yeah, there was a lot in there, right? Because we know that it starts off with August losing his mother, and and Ella saying that, I remember when I lost my mother, and it was a very difficult time for me. If there's anything you need, and you watch them banter back and forth, and then Ella's father passes, and then there's like 2 letters, I think, after that from her, and then there's no more until Lady Tremaine finally writes to August, who I think probably does not know that he is the prince, right? Ella doesn't know that he is the prince. Nobody in town knows that, and when she writes to him, she's like, "Sir, leave us alone," and not "Your Royal Highness, leave us alone." Plus, I think if Lady Tremaine, who is, of course, the wicked stepmother, knew that August was the prince, she probably would have written him with something like, "Oh, please continue to harass my family so that I can marry my daughters up."
I'm gonna be honest, I did not like the letters.
Ooh.
And I think the prologue was way too long for my liking. But also, I didn't like it because you kind of are led to believe that this is not the prince. He was named after the prince along with like 25 other men who share his name. And then I'm like, wait, so she has a friend and whatever. And then in chapter 1, we're automatically like introduced to him as the prince. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I figured, then I thought that maybe the guy we're following is not the same guy from the letter. So I got really confused, and I did not like that.
I honestly thought that it was a different person than, the current royal family, and then he somehow inherits the position, or his family marries in, so that's how he becomes the prince. But yeah, I think at the start it was a little jarring when he was like, "No, I just, share his name." But I think someone going in, especially we kind of knew that it was going to be narrated by the prince. So I thought maybe at first this was like his grandparents, or like his parent, like his dad was writing the letters, and this is like a prequel setup to something in the future, right? Or some other establishing information before we get to the actual narration. But I think, going into it knowing, yeah, this is a retelling with the Prince Charming's point of view, you kind of expect, okay, whatever we're going to read is definitely Prince Charming. And coming to the conclusion that, yeah, he's lying to her about it was kind of like my second or third thought. It wasn't something that I had initially considered.
I don't know that I would call it a proper retelling.
Yeah.
The influence is absolutely there, right? You have the prince, you have Ella, not only with the name, but also blatantly Cinderella influence, and of course Lady Tremaine, Drizella, Anastasia, Lucifer the cat, and like all these extra characters that are there. But I think it's enough of a twist so far that it's not really a proper
Yeah.
retelling. We're not really following the Cinderella story.
No, yeah,
We have
that's
just
true.
kind of taken these characters and plopped them into a different world and a different plot. Although, with a memory curse, that would make a lot more sense about a prince having to try a shoe on to 1,000 different maidens because he couldn't
Mm,
remember what the girl of his dreams looked like. So I'm happy to be done with that particular
yeah.
fetish in the Cinderella tale.
I do think, I mean, these first few chapters were pretty long. I feel like we're going to wrap up the memory thing pretty fast, actually, and I think the second act is going to be a little closer to the
Hmm.
original Disney story, where
Mhm.
it's going to be like the ball, because he's got to go home in a couple days anyway. He can't stay and investigate forever. And when he gets back, the king's going to be like, "Oh, by the way, we're throwing this ball in your honor for you to find a bride."
Ella even says in her letters, like, "Oh, did you meet the royal family and all that stuff?" And I thought, well, maybe the memory curse is on him. Maybe him and his father don't realize that they are the royal family. And then
Mm,
it opens up where
Mm.
there's August the prince and then the father. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe we are now following the actual prince. And then he talks about Ella. And I'm like, wait, what is happening? So yeah, and I agree, Jess. It's definitely not the same retelling. And I think,
hmm
like you were stating before, when we were just having a general chat, it's more like fan fiction.
Yeah, no, it is. But that's what IP is, right? And that's blatantly what this is where it's intellectual property for those at home that might be wondering what I'm saying for the IP work. It's work for hire, where an editor comes out and looks for agents and goes, "Hey, I'm looking to do a series about the Disney princes," which is what this is. It's the third in that series, and we want it to be influenced but maybe not this, and I want XYZ to be included, and I just need somebody to write it for me. And that's what this is. It's professional fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a lot of honestly, it's what a lot Disney puts out a lot now, because it's got Twisted Tales, it's got like stuff like Descendants. Descendants actually I would put with this Prince's thing, because it's not really a retelling. It's just fan fiction about how this world expands, how this becomes something new and something different.
Right. And I'm not a huge fan fiction person. So I don't want to say I'm struggling through this. I'm definitely enjoying the general plot, the general story, but it is a little rough to get through just because I don't know. It definitely feels very, fanficky, and I'm just not that type of girly.
I feel like, on a writing standpoint, I feel like a lot of these first 10 chapters could have been condensed downward. There's a lot where they're walking around and they're
Mm-hmm.
investigating the stuff about who's lost what memory and who has
Mm-hmm.
done this. And I feel like a lot of that could have been shrunk.
The chapters do feel like they go on for a
Yes. And it
very
Yes.
also
long time.
it feels very repetitive. I feel like I'm getting the same information from each person, right? They woke up, they did their thing, and then somebody told them that they forgot somebody. Like, none of them obviously nobody realizes that they have forgotten someone, because then they would have to have remembered that someone. But each person that has forgot someone that so far we believe that they have loved has just had a normal day for that. And I feel like we could have gotten to that point much faster in a much shorter way, which would have allowed us a little more exploration of other things. Like, there have been a few hints about the way that magic works, right? There is a letter from one of the fairies, not necessarily the fairy godmother, but from a fairy, telling them this particular, we can't just tell you about wishes, but
Mm-hmm.
I can leave you a few hints that there was a wish in Fresno, which is the village where everything takes place, and sometimes wishes and the magic thereof get into other objects. And he lists a whole bunch of things like different metals that the magic can get into and different glass that the magic can get into. And I feel like we could have gotten to see more of that exploration and gotten to Martin, right? Martin's the one that ends up forgetting somebody who is August. Martin is August's assistant and friend, and August just kind of experiments on him. He's like, hey, I bought these things from the shop that we think people are getting technically cursed items, because I don't think it's really like an enchanted item if this magic is doing something that is not necessarily intended. He's like, I just want you to wear these and we'll see if you forget anybody. And then like a day later he forgets the guy that he just met, and everyone's like, oh, it's so sad. And I'm like, is it? Because Juliet and Romeo knew each other for a longer period of time than these two have. I wouldn't necessarily call this depressing. It's sad and it's eye-awakening for how fast this particular magic works, but I don't feel the emotional gut punch that I'm supposed to.
I agree. And I also agree that, I also think that for such long chapters, everything happens in such a short amount of time. When they're interviewing everyone, they literally interview every single person the day they get there. Yep. Except I think for like one person. And then the conversations that they're having with these people are not long at all. It's just like, oh, when did you lose your memory? How do you know you lost your memory? What was your daily routine? Okay, thank you, bye. And then they're explaining later in the chapter, like, oh yeah, this person said about this. I'm like, no, they didn't. The interview that we got was just like hi and bye. And not like, oh, we talked to them for like a couple more hours and then blah, blah, blah. It was just like, yeah, we asked them all the questions and then they were off on their own. And then we just went over to the next person and asked them questions. And it just, the action is happening way too fast.
It's weird because that action is happening really fast, but it's being presented very slowly.
Yes.
There's also stuff with the names. Obviously, a lot of them are French. They're French painters. Right? There's Monet and Fauconnier and a few others that are escaping my mind right now. But one that really upset me was Monsieur Picard, because Monsieur Picard is a baker and not a winemaker, and every single Trekkie that is listening to this podcast will understand why I am upset, because first off, Monsieur Picard worked very hard to become an admiral, and he should be addressed as such. And second off, the Picard family makes wine. And it was weird that that upset me. Not really that weird. I am a diehard Trekkie, and, how dare you offend me in such a manner?
How dare they?
How dare they? But there are some, other little French influences. I feel like the aesthetic of it is very, Little French Village. There's 10 chapters, right? And I feel like there's not a lot to talk about in these 10 chapters, because they interview people, they find out that there's magic items from the shop, and then they realize, kind of, not entirely, but kind of, that Lady Tremaine is taking advantage of Ella. And, that's a very short list for 10 chapters.
For 200 pages, too, if the document is to be believed. I feel like a lot of the interviews I kind of feel like they were padding, because maybe it was trying to reach a word count, or the contract was you have to include X, Y, and Z, and this is X, Y, and Z over and over again. Because I agree. I mean, 100% could have just been they talk to the one person, right? They get the full conversation there. So we as the readers get all the information firsthand as well. And then every subsequent interview could have just been we heard the same tale.
Yeah.
And summarized in a couple paragraphs.
I just checked the document. You're right. It is 244 pages.
Yeah. That just the first 10 chapters.
Pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, the margin is also it looks like it's 2 inches all the way around.
Maybe it's going straight to paperback. I don't know.
I think more books should go straight. That's a different. I will stop myself there, because that is an entirely different rant that I am perfectly capable of going on.
I need to get something off my chest, because I took screenshots of these words that did not make sense. And there were some before these. But on page 182, it says, He laughed. Any mud you got covered in you came by honestly with no help from me. And I had to read that sentence over and over and over again because it did not make sense to me. And now I'm thinking about it, and maybe it should be any mud you got covered on you came by honestly with no help from me. It still does not make sense.
I disagree with that one. I didn't have any trouble with that particular line. I don't know if maybe just because I'm more of a fantasy reader and weird stuff like those sentences still kind of click in my head. So it's not something that I would have been I was even tripped up on. And like I kind of understood the sentiment behind it rather quickly, I think. But I mean that is a weird one, especially if you're not used to.
It was weird. That was one of the lines that I also had to read a couple of times. And I also read a lot of fantasy. I think part of my trouble with the dialogue is some of it is very modernized and some of it is very
Yes.
fantastical, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Like it's a little purple. I think Katie said it before, either before we started recording or when we did start recording, that some of it sounds like we're trying to capture the dialogue and voice from the Cinderella movie, as opposed to just letting this be its own thing, where the rest of it is its own thing, so that it is a little confusing.
Right. And then there's another one a little bit that really took me out of it on 209. We usually hire a carriage and the driver Charles has committed to not speaking after an ordeal about it with Lady Tremaine. So you won't mention it, will you? Ella and August were waiting with the carriage in front of the chateau. The driver had stopped before the door, slumped back, and covered his face with his hat the moment he had arrived. At Ella's question, he raised his hand in mock surrender. How could I see anything suspicious when I have my nose in everyone else's business? He asked. All I asked was how she was doing. Ella patted his arm consolingly. Won't Lady Tremaine notice I'm not the footman she hired? August asked. And then, but that whole couple of paragraphs, what question? Who's talking? Like, all I asked was how she was doing. Where? I guess like now that I'm rereading it to you, I think I'm understanding it, but it took me a little bit.
Yeah.
Just the way that it's set up. So now that I've read it to you guys and recording this, I think maybe Charles asked Lady Tremaine how she was doing, and maybe Lady Tremaine made a whole ordeal about it. So he doesn't speak anymore. That's what I'm getting. Never mind. But just the way it was set up.
Yeah, I was also confused there for similar reasons, where it's like, what did he ask her? Like, there is some of this dialogue just kind of dances around the point, and I don't like it.
Yeah. So I think I agree with what you were saying, where some of it's modernized and some of it just kind of flows really well and is its own thing. And then other times it reverts back to the animated classic type of dialogue and feel. And sometimes just the way that everything's set up with how they're speaking, it just, because, I do like fantasy. I do read fantasy. So I think I have a pretty good grasp on the way that it's written and the dialogue is written. It's just, I know that I get confused very easily. So I'm not going to debate that fact. But, but
same girl, same.
Some of this is just like I have to reread it a couple of times, just the way that it's set up, and I think that's it takes me out of the story and the feel and the setting.
Yeah, there are some times when I wonder, like I read mostly at night when I'm on my way to bed, and there are some lines where I'm like, oh, maybe it's because I'm just tired, and then I wake up in the morning and I try to reread it, and I'm like, maybe I wasn't just tired, maybe it is just very oddly worded. I would like to talk about something I liked about the book.
Is it all the cameos of all the different
that's fun,
Disney bits?
right? That's always fun. Intertextuality is king. But no, I really loved the portrayal of the intrusiveness of grief, that there are these little bits, right? August is never really fully expecting to think about his mom, and he goes around things, and he'll be like, oh, I smell like a floral perfume and it smells like her perfume. Or he sees Ella and he's just like, oh, wow, I really miss my friend. But also, I remember this like one breakfast that my friend and I had with my mom. And there's also the whole bit with the glass beaded bracelet that he was supposed to give to somebody. And, so he sees little things and he's like, oh, that kind of reminds me of that. And I really loved how true that felt. He's only a few years out from losing his mother, and it still just hits that button, and it hits it
Mm-hmm.
randomly, so there's no way for him to prepare. And I felt like that was a very true portrayal of grief, where a lot of times in literature we see either grief on every page, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like somebody died on page 5 and we will see it through till page 300, or especially in kidlit and YA, somebody dies and we only grieve about it for the rest of the chapter and then we move on plot wise. His grief shows up in almost every chapter in just little ways.
And going off of that, I also like how sometimes he's good with it, and like he's like, I'm healing, I'm learning. This makes me laugh. Just thinking about my mother makes me happy. And there's other times where he thinks of something and it makes him upset.
Yes.
And that's definitely how grief works. It's not all like heal, 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 heal until you can think about it and be fine or make jokes. It's just some days you can make dark humorous jokes, and other days you just start crying for no reason. And it doesn't matter where you are at on the healing journey. You're gonna have those days and you're gonna have those thoughts. And I just really like how, I agree with you, I like how that's portrayed. I like that,
Yeah.
how that's talked about.
I really loved the scene where he's coming back from Ella's house that one night and Monsieur Picard is waiting for him in the street. And that's when we learn that Picard lost his memory a couple years ago. And he only just recently kind of realized that he did because this person was already dead. And he's old. He's like one of the oldest in the town. So no one else really kind of knows Emmanuel, who was, as he said, they were still young, but they were never married, but we were together from 15 till I put him in the cemetery. And at one point after he asks, after August asks all his little interview questions, he goes, "Can I ask you something personal? Is it better not remembering how much it hurt to lose him the first time?"
Yeah.
And Picard's kind of like, he said, "There's no shame in grief or sadness, and there's none at all in wanting to forget. For some, I'm sure this would be better for them. It's not for me. It's a purgatory. I cannot trust myself to know what I really feel about Emmanuel, and I can never find out because he's the only person I could ask. I think those memories of him were," and that just kind of had me sit down and be like, okay, I guess I'm crying now.
I am, I'll admit it.
Yeah.
I got tears. It's sad.
There's also a line around there where he says, different kinds of love breed different kinds of grief. And I was like, but it's so true.
Like, I think my first thought when I read that line was the difference between how my mom reacted when my grandma passed away and how my dad reacted when his dad passed away, a couple years apart. It was just like, it was completely different for both of them.
Yeah.
And then it was also completely different from how I reacted, how my sister reacted. And it's not going to be the same for everyone, and like y'all, we process it differently, because like Katie said, grief is not really all the same, and it's not all heal, heal, heal. And sometimes you sit back and you're like, oh, I'm thinking of this one moment with this one person, and I feel like there's this great sadness opening up, and sometimes you're like, haha, remember that time she fell on her face? And it's like a whole spectrum.
Parts of this made me think about how I have mourned since my grandmother has passed. And there's a part in there where they talk about kind of looking up and expecting that person to still be there. And as you both know, like I crochet a lot. Been doing it since I was like very little. And I have made so many spectacular things and amazing things and big complicated things. And I have always struggled with granny squares, which are like a basic in crochet, and I've just never really been able to get them to hold that square shape. And I finally started crocheting about a year after my grandmother passed, and I finally got it to stay in a square. And I, of course, live in my grandma's house now, and I held it up instinctually to show her in the chair that she was always sitting in. And then it just slapped me in the face that she was not there for me to show. So I think that in this book, this portrayal of grief, this portrayal of its absolute intrusiveness, and it's for everybody that we see, where they're like, I know that this person meant something to me, and so it hurts that I can't remember them because I'm hurting them by not remembering them, and part of me has been violated in a way by having this memory of this specific person removed. And getting to see that in what I feel is, what's the word? There's a big word.
Melancholic.
Verisimilitude.
Okay.
Yeah, the education came out real hard. Sorry.
Would you like a quarter for that big old word?
I sure would. But it is. There's
Too bad I'm broke.
It's this truth in fiction, right? That we can see that.
And I think we should also mention that the people that are losing their memories of the people that the theory is it's people that they love. Not every character who's forgetting someone that someone has passed on. Like Madame Monet forgot her husband. Her husband's alive and doing well. He's just off traveling for like, I guess, his job or whatever. I don't know. And is it Blaise or Blase? Blaise, I think. Blaise forgot someone that they love and talk to every single day and hang out with, and it hurts their partner.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure even that they're not technically together. Like Blaise, they're roommates, and they were roommates. I'm pretty sure, like, with their line of questioning, it was they're sort of like they were hinting at, moving to quote unquote the next stage. Like they had a dinner, and like she blushes a lot while she was talking about them. Which is another thing I really enjoyed, was the representation of the book. Always leave it to Lindsay to be able to stuff in so many queers everywhere. And I'm really surprised Disney is allowing it through.
Well, Disney right now is like weaponizing the queers because they really hate the governor of Florida. And Florida was like, hey, don't ask, don't tell. And Disney was like, we make a lot of money from the rainbow. So
Disney is the king of queer baiting. But
yes.
Also, I just want to bring up that Blaise and their partner will go down in history as best friends.
Historians will remember them as close buddies.
They just really liked to hug each other a lot.
But yeah, there was also Martin and Oliver, who had met 2 days ago, and like it was very clear by the narration that Martin was developing a crush, and they were flirting, and they were kind of being a little sassy with each other. And then they say that it kind of knocks out their theory of it's someone you love, because there's no way they can be in love. They only met 48 hours ago, and they talked about they let Martin just info dump about birds for like half of dinner at Oliver, which was hilarious.
Martin is on the spectrum.
Oh, 100%.
I'm going to also reference Anna. I'm going to also reference Anna from Frozen.
Oh, there's a lot
you
of
can
references.
if it's true love.
Yeah. You can't marry a man you just met.
You can if it's true love.
I
do want to bring up one thing that I absolutely loved story-wise is the tradition of when someone passes and they're buried in the cemetery, that you take something from one of their possessions, like I guess like a watch or jewelry, and you put it on the stone guards that are sitting right out of the cemetery to help watch over them. And I know that's a big plot point in this story, but I just right off the bat I really liked that. And my first thought was, well, someone's gonna steal all that, because I mean, living in this day and age, that's if I saw like a stone statue at a cemetery, like wearing a bracelet, like a nice diamond bracelet or a seashell bracelet, I'd be like, how long has that been there? Because why is it not stolen yet?
Yeah. Also, most modern cemeteries, when you leave stuff at the grave, they come, they pick it up, and they either toss it or sell it. So
yeah, that's the exact opposite actually in European culture. Like especially in Poland, it is a huge thing to go and visit graves and leave things there. Not like bracelets and shawls and things, but flowers and votives, and it's sort of a big cultural thing to go to the cemetery. Like, I spent a lot of the summer after my grandma passed, almost every other day we went to the cemetery to visit her grave, to pray for her, and to refresh the flowers, leave candles, and all that. And it's sort of like a very big thing, and I wonder if that's kind of the feeling here with the stone guardians.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mhm.
this is a big superstitious cultural thing for the people of Fresno. And I mean, it's a pretty small town. Everyone knows everyone there. So I feel like, it's something that the idea to take something from this guardian is kind of taboo and looked down on if you even so much as think it or suggest it.
Yeah, I also so I have a theory. Tis that time of the episode to start
Mhm.
talking theories. They mention that that glass is a particularly absorbent
Mhm.
material for magic.
Mhm.
And we do know about the glass bracelet, the glass beaded bracelet that he leaves in the cemetery, because he's like, it's half, I'm doing this to respect my mother, and half, I don't want to look at this.
Mhm.
And if I ever find somebody that I'm going to marry, I'll come back and get it. But until then, it can stay there. I think that Natalie, who is the store owner where everybody is getting things that are kind of making them lose their memory, intentionally or otherwise, I think she has definitely, this is one of the things that she has bought, and it has made its way into things. But
I don't know,
Yeah.
because in the story, when they're looking at things, when August is looking at things to buy Martin to test his theory, there's some items where Natalie like straightens up, like, ooh, like, I don't know about that one, that trinket. And there's others that he's looking at that she's like kind of like relaxed with.
mhm.
So I think if it was one thing that she bought that was corrupting other things, she might not know which ones are corrupted and which ones aren't.
I wonder if she knows which ones have material that would have been able to soak up that magic. And so, like, because when
Mm-hmm.
he goes and he looks at the, what is it, the little, like, vineyard cuffs, the little grape cuffs, they're made of
Mm-hmm.
glass. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
she may not know that it's like this specific thing, but I think she knows that it has the potential to have been that, particularly because it's right after the conversation where he's like, "Hey, have you ever bought magical items?"
Mm-hmm.
And so it's whenever he's around the material that he listed off earlier that she kind of gets a little rigid, but the glass especially, she's like, "Ooh, maybe don't touch that." I also agree with earlier I think Maggie had said that, we are going to see the Cinderella tale with the shoe and everything. And the shoe is made of glass. And we already know that that's a material that absorbs this special wish magic. So I feel like that's going to have some sort of play.
I know that it's a Disney property that they're doing, but part of me kind of hopes it goes the way of Brother Grimm. It just gets a little too violent.
Yes.
I just think that would be
Chopping off
funny.
toes and
Mhm,
heels.
mhm, mhm.
Woo! Do we want to leave it at chopping off toes and heels, or do we want chopping off toes and heels and having a bunch of birds come in and peck out people's eyeballs?
And having the stepmother dance in iron boots until she dies from bloodied feet.
Yeah, are we like full Grimm fairy tale, or are we just
I'm
like,
full grin
yeah?
fairy tale.
Well, Lindsay, I hope that feet get chopped off. What a great place to end the episode. No. I have, I think, one more. Yeah, I have one more topic to bring
Mhm.
up, and it is the awkwardness between Ella and August. So we have all the letters, and they're clearly kind of flirting in the letters, right? I don't think anybody can
Mhm.
deny that they're like, hey, we were friends, quote unquote, but now we're older. Maybe we can be a different kind of friends. And then
Historians will mark them down as best friends.
best friends, yes, despite being buried with each other. But then all of their interactions are super awkward, which tracks because they are friends that lost touch, and Ella is clearly hiding something from August, and August is canonically already hiding something from Ella. But all of these moments where they have like a little brush of the hand, there's a part in the kitchen where she trips because the cat Lucifer runs between her legs and she like falls back, and there's a line where it says that like her eyelashes tickled his cheek. I'm like, how close is she to your face? Or how big are her eyelashes? I don't know which way this particular description is going. Right? She's just got those like
3-inch
huge fake ones
eyelashes.
that like,
It's just all the rage.
yeah,
She gets them threaded.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it all felt very forced. It was all very like, oops, I fell and now I'm touching you. I was okay with the forcedness between them before the forcedness between them felt romantic, even though I know that it is a Cinderella influenced retelling, whatever we're going to label that, knowing that the inevitability here is that they will be a romantic item. But once the romance kind of came into it, and August is like, no, I can't like you like that, your life is like not great and I don't need to add that stress, I felt very uncomfortable. Like it felt less like two friends dancing around the issue, right? Like Kajik and Gazella were two friends dancing around the issue. But August and Ella feel more like August very clearly has feelings for Ella, and Ella either is oblivious or wants nothing to do with him.
Well, it's pretty clear that she didn't get the last couple of letters from him because it was after the dad died, because Lady Tremaine was obviously withholding them. So yes. I feel like she also doesn't have the full story of why he is the way he is towards her, or at least was.
Yeah. There's also, on that note, there are like a couple snide comments that she makes where there's like a whole conversation they have about hope and how important hope is, and August says, Lady Tremaine isn't stealing your hope, is she? And she responds with, no, I try not to give anyone that power. There's a few other times like that where she's just like, no, I don't give a because there's an unsaid part of there, like, because you stopped writing to me in one of my darkest hours.
Mm-hmm. But then there's a part where she says, like, I know I stopped writing you and that was really, like, cruddy of me.
Yeah.
So I think she did get all the letters.
Oh.
I think it was because there were a few at the beginning, which she probably got the ones in the beginning, but I think because because some of his responses were like, oh, thank you for sending the note that you're receiving them. But a lot of it was her reasoning was that she's mourning too much. She doesn't want to see anyone. She doesn't want to talk to anyone. And that included him. And so he was giving her space. But then when she stopped responding in total, like where he starts sending all those letters, like angrily being like, oh, do what you want to do, whatever, you know, I'm just going to go and be a broody teenage boy over here. I think those were the letters that, you know, the last like maybe 3 or 4 letters, I think were the ones that were withheld from her. Cause that's when we get the Lady Tremaine letter. And she's like, if you ever contact my family again, I will, you know, have you taken care of, or whatever she says, you know?
Yeah. So what was the one thing that you were trying to say beforehand?
I really like the little cameos to other Disney things. The only 2 that I managed to highlight, because I didn't think to do it in the moment, was there was when he first comes to the house and he sees Ella in the kitchen and she's holding a chipped cup. And that, you know, Beauty and the Beast, obviously. But there was also the moment where she mentions wanting to open up her own little seamstress shop. And she was like, oh, I'll call it a Stitch in Time. And that was one of the direct to TV Cinderella sequels that it just tickled me a little bit. It felt very Disney-esque, or it feels like looking for the Planet Pizza truck in Pixar movies. So now I'm just wondering, yeah.
There was also along with that where it's like, I'll call it a Stitch in Time and I'll give a discount to every 9th customer to complete the phrase Stitch in Time saves 9. And I was like, oh, it's so terrible. Go on.
It just felt so Disney-esque and I loved it. I'm wondering I'm also wondering how many of the chapter titles actually are references to like Into the Woods and other.
I'm sorry, there's no way that they aren't. The opening chapter is He Was a Very Nice Prince. Right? Like he was a very nice prince, work song, if only there were a table of contents, not even once. No one is alone.
Not while I'm around.
Yeah, not while I'm around. A Very Nice Maid. A Dream, A Wish. Like, these are all either direct Disney song references, they're Into the Woods references, they're Rodgers and Hammerstein references, and like all of these, I could not help but be right to the opening one. He was a very nice prince. He's a prince who prepares, and he is actually a prince who prepares a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, at what point are we going to see Pitch on the stairs? That's a wrap on this episode of Booked All Night. Click that follow button and subscribe to the show, share this episode everywhere you can, and don't forget to drop a review. We're a small corner of the internet, and every little bit helps. Visit link.bio/bookedallnight from the convenient link in the show notes to see our other reviews, find us on Instagram and TikTok, and join our Discord community where we'll be running all of our giveaways, posting excerpts, and streaming our interviews live. Join today, invite your friends and fellow readers, and help us hit our very first goal of 100 members. When we hit 100 members, we'll run our first giveaway. Booked All Night is produced by Rob Cook. Whenever you share an episode, be sure to tag us at Booked All Night Pod and say hi to our guy in the sound booth. Join us next week as we launch into chapters 11 through 20 of Prince of Glass and Midnight by Lindsay Miller. Until next time, my little Libernauts, this is Jessica Mary, Kaylee, and Magdalyn Ann signing off and reminding you all to stay booked all night.